Welcome, everybody, to Ghostlight, a podcast about the intersection of business and the performing arts. Each week, I sit down with industry professionals to talk about the nuts and bolts of surviving and thriving, hopefully, in the arts industry. And I'm joined today by Jessie Lillis. Jessie, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. So nice to be here.
It's nice to have you back again. People will be listening to this at the top of 2026. We just finished 2025. How was your year
wild.
at Starling Shakespeare?
It was good. It was kind of a banner year, I think, in some ways. So this was our 5th season doing the Mackinac Island Shakespeare Festival. And I feel like there's a lot of numbers that get thrown around as sort of, well, you got to make it through the first year and then you've made it. Or, oh, you have to get to year 3 or 5 or 10 or whatever. But for us, I think 5 felt kind of monumental. First off, in that we have survived. We've kept doing it. We've expanded every year, which has been exciting to see the growth. I think, as we've learned a lot of lessons as a company, and I think we've been able to translate that into a lot of our performances too. I think I'm really proud of the shows that we had out this year, as I have been every year, but I think it's exciting to just see, the more we kind of dig into the style of shows that we do with only 5 actors and minimal sets, prop, costume, all that, finding new ways to get creative and getting new voices in the room that have exciting ways to kind of innovate on the genre has been really exciting to see. And I think this year, I think we surprised some audiences. We did Hamlet. And when you tell people you're doing a 90-minute Hamlet with 5 people, they usually laugh at you or go, well, that's never going to work, or some, combination. So it was exciting to see people that came out from the show going, wow, that was really compelling and you did it. And I didn't feel like I was missing things from it. I didn't feel like I didn't get to see the full story. So really, really rewarding in that way.
So, okay, in a moment, I want you to help any of the listeners who maybe are completely unfamiliar with your company understand why it exists and what you guys do and sort of your vision for where you'd like to see it go. But I want to point out a couple of things that you mentioned and just celebrate along with you. I mean, getting through 5 years as a nonprofit in this industry is a huge achievement, starting from scratch. I mean, I think a lot of people have a dream about opening a theater company. And I think the second that they try to do it, it's a lot harder than they ever imagined it was going to be. And so I think a lot of people don't make it through year 1 or even get the thing off the ground in the first place. So yeah, I would agree getting to the mark of 5 years operating is a huge achievement, no matter at what scale you do it. So I just want to celebrate you.
Thank you.
And so now I invite you to tell us and the listeners why Starling exists and what you guys do and what you see as the vision moving forward into next year.
Yeah. So Starling, in some ways, Starling is an idea that I had been kicking around for about a decade, but I thought that practically and realistically, it wouldn't happen until I was 20 years farther along in my career. But 2020 happened, which was not a great time for anyone or anything, but especially not for live theater. So my co-founder, Heron Kennedy, and I, we finished our MFAs in the spring of 2020. And at that point, both of us had originally been thinking about, going out and auditioning places and, moving and working. But given what was happening with the world and with the industry, that was obviously not really possible. And I thought about something that one of our professors and friends and mentors, Doreen Bechtel, had said during grad school, where I can't remember the exact phrasing. I'll probably butcher this, but it was basically like, if you want to do work, make work. If you're not getting work and you want to be doing it, if you have an idea, do the thing. And so we had a lot of time in the summer of 2020 to think. This is also when there was a lot of kind of upheaval in the industry about inequities and injustices and things that are just problematic and practices that are not good and that we shouldn't be reinforcing or uplifting. And so we kind of had time to think about all of those sorts of things, to look at what was happening to theaters that we were seeing have to close their doors, unfortunately, and kind of came up with this plan. At the time, we were thinking, okay, well, we can't do theater inside and we don't know if or when we'll be able to again. So outdoor theater it is. And then this was also at a time when the COVID vaccine didn't exist yet. And so we had to have COVID bubbles. And so you couldn't have more than 10 people in a room. So we said, okay, So we can't have more than 10. So we need actors, we need a director, we want a stage manager, we might need designers or choreographers of some sort. And fortunately, the graduate program that both of us had gone to, we did a style of shows with only 5 actors. So it was something we were familiar with. I directed a production of The Tempest with 4 people. Heron was one of those 4. So we were quite familiar with it and really enjoyed that. So we kind of threw together this idea, pitched it to a few people. Our first year, we did the Mackinac Island Shakespeare Festival. So Mackinac Island is this little island in northern Michigan between the upper and lower peninsulas. They have a really lively arts scene in the summers. It's a huge tourist destination, but there wasn't a ton of theater presence. There's a really strong community theater, but there wasn't really any professional theater on the island. This is a place that I grew up going to as a kid and have sort of been proselytizing about it to anyone who would listen for 30 plus years at this point. And so I reached out to some folks there and kind of pitched this. And they said, I mean, yeah, if you can pull it off, we know people would like it because they've been asking for something like this, but there's a lot of difficulty in doing that. And frankly, that was all we needed to hear, when we have all this time in 2020 to kind of think and plan. And I love a challenge. And so that was kind of how we were born. So our second year, we expanded to add touring, and now that's sort of a staple of our work as well. We go all over the Midwest and the East Coast doing primarily outdoor shows. So they're all, we do 2 shows in rep with 5 actors each. And we have a touring manager that travels with them as well. Sort of this ragtag bunch of 6 folks on the road in a bunch of vans, driving around, putting up shows. We try to keep as many of the shows as possible free for the public. That is really important to me, kind of morally, I guess. I think that art is a public good, and I think that people should have access to high quality art. I don't think that you should have to go to New York or Chicago to see really good plays. And especially for something like Shakespeare, there is a sort of barrier to entry, I think, automatically. There are people that are like, oh, that's not for me. Or I'm not going to understand it, or I won't like it. And so if I then slap a $40 ticket price on that, I'm not going to get a family of 6 that's going to come when they think they might not like it. But if it's in the park that they go to with their kids all the time and they stumble upon it and they see the show, we've had so many interactions with people over the years where that was the exact situation that happened. And now they follow us and they come see our shows every year when we come back to town. And that's been such a rewarding part of this. It kind of makes all of the administrative work and the fundraising and the nights of sleep lost worth it. I think to see, these kids who are coming back and these families who are so excited that they have something different and creative to see in their hometown.
Well, that to me really sounded like getting at the heart of your mission and your vision for the company,
Mm-hmm.
in that theater is a public good, I think. Is that what you said? And
Yep.
that,
Yeah.
and keeping it free and the barrier to entry available to people who otherwise would not engage with it. And it brought up an interesting thought that I've had that I'd love to hear your opinion on, which is I've started to wonder if we've kind of conflated nonprofit. Let me figure out how to say this the right way.
Is this the nonprofit as a tax status, not a business model?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you
Yeah.
saying, look, we provide this service, right? Which is, if we got into your revenue model, as in how do you actually make this thing sustainable, viable? How do you, provide the services that you provide, because everything is going to cost money, from the, the sets to the costumes to the actors to the getting them from location A to location B. So somewhere along the way, money has to change hands. But when you don't place a ticket price, an admission price, I mean, that is very clear that you are providing a service as a nonprofit organization. And I'm assuming that what that also says is you rely entirely on donations in order to continue to provide that service. And that to me seems like a very different thing than we produce professional theater, but our ticket sales don't cover the cost of the productions that we make. And so we have to augment our income with donations and grants. And I feel like we've conflated those two things. And to me, they seem very different.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think So yeah, I mean, to sort of briefly touch on the like, how do we make this work? Because I think that's always people's question, and it what it means for us practically is that like we have to do some education around. I think especially because many times we have actors who are quite young presenting. They are usually not actually as young as people think they are, but there's something about touring theater that you're relatively spry while you're out there, and people are like, "Oh, well, you must be 19." So we have to, make sure people know, like, "Hey, this is not a school project. We're not sponsored by the college we all go to. We're all professional actors." This is a job, we're here getting paid. And just because you're not paying a ticket cost doesn't mean that this didn't cost a lot of money to produce. So some of it, what that means for us is that we have to kind of kindly educate in the quality of what they're receiving and sort of what you know the value would be if we were putting a ticket price on it, and then explaining why we don't do that as well. And I think that that narrative is quite compelling for audiences. We've had a lot of people that we have some, when people reserve a ticket online, a free ticket online, they have the option to donate there. We also accept donations afterward. We do get business sponsors and grants. We have oftentimes when we're going into a town, we have, whether it's an arts council or like a municipal government or whatever, they pay a performance fee, which helps subsidize those costs to audiences. So it's another way that, we're trying to find communities where there are places that we can partner with who know this is what the community wants. This is something that will do well in our town. This is something that we want to make sure we're offering for our citizens so that they get to enjoy this art. So that's kind of the how do we make it work without charging the audiences? But yeah, I do think it's a very different thing than like you have to pay a ticket price for this thing we're offering, but then also we need you to give us more money as well. It feels like it feels like there's sort of different conversations that are happening. I don't know what the answer is to that. I think that's what's so tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely not trying to say that one is right and one is wrong.
For sure. Yeah.
But I do think that thinking about them very differently and approaching them very differently is probably important. And I think we don't think of them as different. They look on the outside as if they're the same thing.
Hmm.
Well, so that had me wondering, what do you know the percentages of where your revenue comes from? How much is just individual donors versus grants versus businesses?
Yeah, let me think. I definitely should know this. So this is a good reminder for me to do these numbers for 2025 as I'm getting all of our tax paperwork ready. Um, Let me think offhand. I think probably about 40%, 35 to 40%, I think, is um, performance fees. That's a little high, I think. I think it's probably 30 to 35. Easily 40% is donations. Um, Maybe even a little higher. And then probably the rest is a combination of like grants and then business sponsorships. But a lot is donations.
Is just personal donors saying, we would like you to continue doing this, and here's some money so you
Yeah.
can do so.
And that's a combination of, some folks we have longstanding relationships with who have been donors since the very beginning, and they're kind of bigger donors in terms of amount donated,
Hmm.
down to, the kid who comes to the show and has all of the change that they saved up and they wanted to bring to the actors that they saw last year. That's sort of all lumped into the way I'm thinking about this. They're all sort of lumped into donors. But yeah, that's a huge amount of our revenue comes from there, which is, I think, quite different than most other theaters that I've interacted with, that especially because like we don't have a spot for ticket sales. We don't have that line item in our budget that says, well, we know we just have to get, you know, X number of butts and seats, and then we're good. We don't have that as an option. I'm glad that we do these shows the way we do. I think that it is, like I said, I think it's a public good, and I think it's a really worthwhile cause. I'm from a really small town. We were incredibly lucky and still are to have a really fantastic theater that puts on professional summer stock every year. But if we would have had like touring Shakespeare that came to the park and people could just go to it. Like, what an incredible thing that would have been. And I mean, now they do. Now that's us. So we get to go there and we get to see the shows at the theater and do shows in the park. And I think, finding other places like that, we tend to go to small to mid-size towns and cities that, you're not going to get the Broadway National Tour of Come From Away that's going to come to town, but we could, and get those people excited about and interested in theater and connection and storytelling and all that.
So why Starling?
You mean why the name of it, or?
Yeah. Does it
Okay,
tie
so
into the vision?
yeah,
And
it
so
really
how?
does. So there's a little bit of lore around this. So Heron, my co-founder, the first show that we did together in graduate school was Henry IV Part 1. I was playing Hotspur and she was playing Hal. So this is some like nerd knowledge if anyone cares for it. There was a
Yeah.
project in the, oh gosh, I think it was like the 19th or 20th, maybe it's 1800s perhaps. I forget the timing, but basically this group of people decided they wanted to bring all of the birds mentioned in Shakespeare's play to New York, to Central Park. So they did that. Most of them died because that's not how animals live. But the European starling thrived and is now one of the most prevalent invasive species in this region of the world. So the starling is only present in the United States because of Shakespeare. Starlings are also mimics, which we thought was sort of like a cheeky little nod to actors. They also, this is the part that like perhaps this isn't on our website, but we thought was kind of amusing. Starlings, they're an incredibly problematic bird, but they'll show up, they'll like kick people out of their nest and then just live there. And we were like, well, we're a touring theater. So we kind of show up in your nest and we like do some shows and then we leave. So we thought it was sort of a cheeky little nod to that. But I think, especially the fact that we are touring and we're exclusively touring. We don't have a physical space. And that was partially a response to seeing what was happening during COVID, because theaters were not able to pay rent. And so they lost their mortgages, they lost their space, they had to close. And so we said, well, if we just don't have rent, we just don't have a mortgage, that significantly lowers our overhead, which also I think helps us be able to produce without a ticket price, because I
Hmm.
don't have to worry about like, well, every month I have to pay rent. So that was part of it too, of, this is a migratory bird who's moving around from place to place, which is exactly what we're doing as we're doing shows. So it's sort of a layered name. But yeah, it's been fun over the years. The first thing that we kind of came up with as an idea for like a silly little thing we wanted on our merch was having a starling with a ruff on it. And we have this incredible designer who did that for us. And that's on a lot of our stuff now, which I love.
Very cool. So it sounds like a lot of this was necessity is the mother of invention, kind of,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
we're gonna we're being handed a set of parameters that we're not allowed to operate outside of with COVID, starting during COVID.
Hmm.
And then that kind of gave you the rules within which you had to create this company under. And
Hmm.
what I think is really good about that is that it speaks directly to the times that we're in right now. And I think it's honest it's connected in your mission and what you're trying to do, which is professional theater for free so that communities can access it. And so some of these things need to not be true, like not having a high overhead every single month, and
Hmm.
um, being able to, having a lower amount of actors so that you also lower the cost there, but so that you're also able to achieve the end goal. What do you think? You joined us on the Stageable platform in 2025. And so I'm curious kind of what you see as the interplay between um, a theater company and the creation of digital content. What does that look like as we head into a new year and into a world that, from all accounts, seems to be increasingly happening online?
Yeah, it's a great question. I certainly don't feel like I have answers. but I am chronically online. And so I think it's been interesting, having my sort of personal life where like, I'm just like everyone else. I'm scrolling on TikTok. I'm watching things on Instagram Reels. I'm engaging with online content almost all the time because it is everywhere and I work from home, so I'm on my computer, I'm on my phone. But I also have this professional and to some extent, the personal side of me too that loves live theater and live interaction and getting to have, there's a reason that I decided I wanted to focus on theater and I didn't go into stage and screen because I love that physical interplay and exchange that you get with audiences and with other actors. And so thinking about like how do we marry those? It's a really good question. I think there are opportunities. This might be a controversial statement. I don't love Zoom theater. I feel like it. I'm so glad that we had that as a thing we could do for a time, but I don't think that that is necessarily the way forward, or at least not the way we were kind of doing it right off the bat in 2020. That said, I think that there are so many parts of um, the process that I think people are kind of interested in. If you think about like a lot of the things that end up being trending on social media are like, behind the scenes things or material where it's like people are just sort of like out there being themselves, doing the things that they're doing. And so I do wonder, like, is there a world where, if you've seen the product that we have to offer, if you've seen one of our shows, do you want to see more about how the sausage gets made? Do you want to see more about, how did we get from point A to point B? I think for our purposes, that also could be useful in explaining like just how much work goes into this. It's really easy to look at the final product and just be like, oh my God, they make it look so easy. Anybody could do that. And it's really not the case. Anyone who's done professional theater knows that. It's incredibly hard. It takes so much time and effort and a lot of people. So I think, maybe there's a world where we can use a platform like Stageable to peel the curtain back a little bit. On the flip side, I think that there are ways that, if we have performances that are more conducive to being live streamed, as I'm thinking about what's important to us, so much of our kind of mission and vision for the future is around access. And we can't go everywhere. God, I'd love to be able to, but unless someone gives me a money tree, I can't take my show everywhere around the country. But if we can live stream it, if we can figure out a way to even just give bits and pieces of the show or the material and get people excited about it, I think that is important. And figuring out, kind of this sort of next step from there of like, well, if we can get people interested in this digital content, maybe when they do have the time and the resources, maybe they can travel to go see one of our shows. Maybe we can meet in the middle. I think there's a lot of ways to sort of think about what this could be and how we use those tools. So I guess sort of a combination of like, you know, revealing the background, the behind the scenes things, and then trying to get more of the polished product in front of people who otherwise might not be able to see it. Or, for our shows, when we're touring, frequently we're only doing one show in a town. And so can we have our second show, or, if we have a live stream of each one, if you saw, one show on the road and you really liked it, maybe you'll come and join us for the live stream of the other one because you want to see, how did those 5 people do this show at the same time? I think is another interesting way to try to use it.
Which would then give you another opportunity to say, here's what we do, here's why we do it, and here's why you should consider supporting us if you
Exactly.
want to see it continue. Which I think it's like I go to church every Sunday, not every Sunday. Many Sundays I go to church, and it doesn't cost anything to go to church. You have to go for free. But at my particular church, every single week they make a point of, we tithe, right? That's a part of the community, and we all give to the church so that this can continue and move forward. And something I say within my businesses all the time, one of our core values is communication. We communicate. And I was just having this conversation today with a couple of my team, and I was saying, you think that you've communicated something clearly, because in your head, it's very
Yep.
clear. But it's like, it's not until you said it the 100th time that it finally clicks in the other people's ears. And so we've got to kind of consistently give this messaging again and again and
Yeah.
again, so that it sticks in the end. And I think the more that theaters can find those opportunities to engage with people, which, means creating value for them. It means, like you said, it's if what we did in COVID with Zoom theater was not that great, then let's not keep doing what's not great and what's not providing value for the audience. I think my pushback, I was thinking about it as you were talking about Zoom theater and about how that is not great. And I would agree with you. I don't think it's an unpopular opinion. I think it's kind of the opinion of most artists in theater.
Okay. Phew.
But I also think like we didn't go far enough and we didn't start experimenting with what it could be. And so
Mm-hmm.
how can we mimic as close as we can the live experience? Which part of that is, is this happening in real time or is it canned? I think if it's in real time, it's always better. Are we utilizing these tools to their full capability? As in, you know, this platform that we're recording this podcast on has the ability for someone to be in on this as a producer and on the fly adjusting like what the cameras are. So like it could be just you as a full screen. It can be this split screen, which you and I are both seeing right now. I could turn, if there were 4 people, I could turn off 2 of them. So we're only
Hmm.
seeing the video and audio of 2 people. And then a third could pop in. So very much like a stage manager or a live broadcast, we actually have the ability and the tools within our pockets to really start playing and experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like we're a little scared and we don't really know what to do. And so then we go and we try something and it doesn't necessarily work that great. And so the most natural response, of course, then is to be like, well, let's just
I'll just
not
never
do
do
it
it
because
again.
it didn't
Yeah.
it didn't go very well. So that leads me to ask you, you experimented with some live streams in 2025 and I want
Mm-hmm.
and I want to hear how that experience was for you, and if you are considering maybe trying some more in 2026, and what you might adjust as you move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. This is especially funny. If you ever want to really be humbled, um, think that you're pretty decent at technology and then try to do a live stream on YouTube and you'll just discover that you're really not. Yeah, so we had a couple live streams that we attempted to do. And we ran into a number of issues. One of them, the first one we did, it looked, I swear to you, the two incredible actors I had with me were so gung ho, and we all thought it was working. And we discovered partway through when I get a text from my sister who was trying to watch it, and she said, "There's nothing going." And I was like, we have been talking for 25 minutes. So that was certainly a lesson for us about, um, do a dry run. Do a dry run before. So the second time we did try to do that, still ran into issues, which I, to this day, like I genuinely don't understand what happened with that one. But I think that I was thinking, about what you said with, when you try it and it doesn't work, and then you're like, well, I guess I'll just never do it. Failure is so scary, and public failure is terrifying. And public failure in the digital age is even more terrifying. I talk about this with my students a lot of like, just because you might look a little foolish, like that doesn't mean you just shouldn't try. But it is really scary. And I think, for us, it was a lesson in like, okay, we need to put some time in and like figure out how to do this and how to do it well, because I do think you only have so many times of it like failing miserably before your audiences are like, yeah, I'm not into it. I think you have to be able to show the ability to learn and grow. And so for us, it was, and for me specifically, like, okay, I need to learn how to do this. This is not a skill set that I have. I thought I could just sort of like, millennial technology my way through it. And it turns out that no, there was a higher barrier to entry that I need to learn how to do and to test and to do some dry runs and, rely on my friends and family and colleagues that I can say like, hey, I need you to take 5 minutes and watch this thing with me and see, like, make sure you can see me talking, that ultimately is important and worth it, and not just assuming you can get by. I think it also, the one thing that I do think was a huge benefit for us is that it gave us a chance to see like, okay, so what kind of prep was effective? What wasn't in terms of the content? So like we did one that was talking about what it's like to be a touring actor. That was sort of a Q&A, and we did one that was about music and about there's a lot of music in both of the shows this year. Our production of Comedy Bears had like a few covers with rewritten lyrics. It also had like an entirely original songs talking about what that process was like of building that, giving some snippets of what those songs were, and figuring out like from a creator and a content standpoint, like was this enjoyable to put together? Did we feel like we got to share interesting things? Do we think audiences would actually, if they had been able to see it, would they have cared? So I think that was a good sort of like opportunity for us to do some soul searching about that and answer some of those questions for ourselves. So yeah, we are. I'm looking at some options for things to do coming up in 2026 that are kind of a combination of, as we get into the casting and the pre-production process, it's sort of the question of like, when I don't have a show to give people, what do I give them? What sort of content can I be providing? But I think that's where we can have the opportunity to see what is it like to be putting this together? What's it like to be doing all of the prep work and in pre-production meetings and working on designs and getting the company together and all of that? And thinking about some not lower effort in terms of like people will be phoning it in, but lower effort in terms of like demands on time of, okay, if we want to put together some sort of like digital performance, live digital performance, maybe it's using past company members who have the time that they're able to sort of dedicate towards something that would be certainly less time than it requires to put together a full production, a lot like a live theater production. But what would that look like? What would it be? How would it still kind of fit within our vision and the kind of work that we produce, but also give people something interesting to watch? We've all had a Friday night where we don't want to leave our house. So what can we give you that will be something entertaining, is going to remind you who we are and that we exist and that you want to see our shows and that you want to continue to support the work that we're doing. So yeah, we're kicking around some ideas.
Well, I think that's one of the messages that I have to any artistic director that does want to play in this space and experiment and isn't afraid of the trepidation of failure, which is
Hmm.
bound to happen as we try to navigate a whole bunch of new skill sets that we didn't have to have before.
Hmm.
My my plea to you and to anyone who's going to try this is like, yes, lowering the barrier to entry for yourself, making it less of a heavy lift,
Hmm.
100%. Like, I think I would focus on things that you're already doing. Like we're already going to be doing a read through, whether that's in person or even easier if it's online. Okay, how do we do a read through online to the best of our ability? And then if we do a read through online to the best of our ability, have we now created a first read through that actually has some entertainment value to it, that
Hmm.
people who have already shown an interest in us would, for a small price, even be interested in tuning in? Or if it's, for Starling, if it's more important that the content is free, making sure you are including a thank you for everybody who's tuning in. We want to remind you that Starling operates on donations, 40%, 45% on donations, and we can't do all this work without your continual support. It's a one-time thing is not enough. So yeah, that would be my suggestion is like, you're probably already doing things that a lot of your audience would find very valuable. It's just like, how do I let them into the room, and
Hmm.
what does that look like? Whether that room is digital or if it's physical, in the sense that you're doing a read through in an actual room, someone's living room, but then you could make sure that person has nice high speed internet, and you get, a couple of better cameras, and are
Hmm.
able to like give a good viewer experience of what's going on in that space.
Yeah.
Mm, Because I do think we have to find ways to lower the burden. I think it is a lot to learn. And when you start I mean, there's so many points of failure in a live stream, right? Because you've
Hmm.
got the sound could go wrong, any of the camera connections could go wrong, the the internet can fail you. And so it's just like where can we eliminate the variables and still create a really nice finished product?
Hmm.
And I've been doing this for, geez, I started trying to get into this in like, I think the latter half of 2023, and finally got over all of my fears and just did a live stream with like iPhones and an app I found with my iPad, and like,
Nice.
and it was bad, but it's like,
But you did
and I
it. I think that's the
continually,
thing. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, you just got to kind of throw something against the wall.
exactly. I was thinking about something you said earlier with like, the kind of container that COVID gave us. And like, that was what Starling was kind of born out of and like operating within this container. I think that that's one of the challenges and opportunities, frankly, especially for like theater makers who are interested in expanding to a digital presence or more of a digital platform of like, this is a different container than we've operated in. And so doing the thing that we've been doing, it's not a one-to-one translation. At the same time, it's also not, you're not going to do the things that you would do if you're like making a film. Like it's just not the same. It's a whole new container and it gives us the opportunity to think about like, okay, what are the things that we want to keep from this little box over here where we're making theater? And what are the things that we want to take from the live stream world over here? What's the secret third box that we're just discovering? And like, how do we put that all together and make something interesting? And we're probably going to spend a lot of time doing things that are either not interesting or they don't go as smoothly as we wanted or whatever. But I think that effort is necessary to figure it out. I mean, I'm just thinking about, like different online communities and things that I've been a part of over the years of like, where did they start to where did they end? You never start with the cream of the crop. You're figuring it out. And I think this is a space where we have so much opportunity. And I think because of that, a decent amount of forgiveness from audiences to be like, hey, I get it. We're building the foundation and we're here with you and we're excited about that. So more of it is just getting over the internal fears of like, I need people to like my work so that they will pay me to do my work. And what if they don't like it? And what if it's bad? And you have to just like silence the demons.
Yeah, absolutely. So you and I are about to be in Newfoundland, Canada,
We are.
and we
In
are
January of all times, the best time to
in,
go to Northern Canada.
yes, because you're going to be leading a Q&A with some other guests, myself being on that panel about digital content creation for Shakespeare theaters,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
What are we going to say?
That's such a good question. I'm excited about this. I think that this is a space. So I've been going to this conference. This will be my fourth year, I think. There is that true? I think it's the fourth year, and I feel like there's always conversations about marketing, and usually somebody will be like, "Yeah, we have a Twitter," um, but it's not been. I don't believe that I've really seen. I could be misremembering, but I don't think I've seen a session that is so wholly and exclusively focused on digital content creation for theaters. And I do think that it is an interesting space. So I'm excited to see. We have one of the folks on the panel is actually someone who directed for Starling, Austin Titchener with Reduced Shakespeare Company, directed for us is that our second year? I think it was I'm checking our posters on the wall. Yes, our second year, Austin directed for us. So I know him quite well. And he has I think it might be the longest running theater podcast. He's been doing it for well over a decade, I believe.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see, that's a space where like, I'm sure that what he's doing now has evolved from where it started. So I think one of the things I'm excited to see and some questions that I'll have for you guys as the moderator is going to be, thinking about this is a newer venture and platform. I think the video digital content creation is a newer thing than podcasting has been around and been a lot more popular, I think, for longer.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit more mature in its evolution. So I'm curious, thinking about like at the early days of podcasting, what were some of the like things people were trying out or attempts that didn't work out? What are the things that we like, the places that we stumbled and tried something and maybe it worked and maybe it didn't, but what are the lessons we learned? And is there anything we can kind of extrapolate from that, thinking about this younger venture and medium? Are there any, any things we can glean that are useful lessons for this space? Obviously understanding that like they're catering to kind of different audiences, they're offering a different product, but they are both mediums that are adjacent to theater, adjacent to like the thing that we are doing most of the time. But I think an important part of reaching audiences and getting in front of people and advertising and marketing and all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really excited for the conversation. I want to be pretty upfront with anybody who's in attendance and be like, by no means am I an expert in this field or even an accomplished content creator by any stretch of the imagination. I feel a little bit more like the voice in the night being like, we need to head into the unknown and figure it out and let the creatives get creative on what that means. Because I do think one of the things that we really miss the mark on is social media as a marketing tool. And I think what we miss is we misunderstand what the purpose of it is. Like we make it about us, as in the theaters make it about the theater, as opposed to making it about the audience. So, your organization or any organization, right? They have something specific that's unique to them. And so we need to be creating content that your audience finds useful, finds valuable, finds entertaining, finds interesting, that engages with them and makes them sort of the focal point, as opposed to the focal point being about what the organization wants.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like this is I've talked to a couple people who are like social media managers or that is a big part of their job in marketing. And it's interesting seeing, over the last decade the way that has become the way that social media in particular has become such a bigger part of their responsibilities, and yet there has never been any training. There has never been any like I mean there weren't best practices when they started because it hadn't existed long enough and nobody knew. And even now it is difficult to say there's not really like a one size fits all of like, oh, this always works, because so much of it is dependent on like, what does the algorithm decide it wants? What else is happening in the world on the day you posted that thing or in the 24 hours after you posted that thing? And those are things that you can't know and you can't control. And so at a certain point it's like, well, you're kind of just doing a numbers game, but it's tricky, it's complicated. And I think there is something about theater. I mean, it's been around for eons. And that's not to say there are innovations every day in storytelling and the ways that we're doing that, but there's some like core principles that are like, well, it's always been like this and it works, if it ain't broke. And shifting into this sort of digital space, there's none of that. And I think there's something that feels almost anathema to like the things that draw a person to theater might be like, oh yeah, I know there are these steps and we do, we cast a show, we have a read through, we do rehearsals, we put on a play, done. And that doesn't really exist in this space. And so I think there's something kind of terrifying but exciting if you're like I don't know. Oh, I was about to start comparing this to like extreme sports, and I don't think that digital content creation is the extreme sports of theater necessarily, but there's something that I think can be really thrilling and exciting about trying something new, and knowing that, maybe you'll fail, but unlike an extreme sport, you probably will not literally crash and burn. You might just say, okay, that one didn't work. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that I think is so great about Stageable is that like it is providing a platform for creatives to try, and providing some infrastructure and community with other people who are also trying. Because I think it can feel really isolating to be like, yeah, I don't know. I made a video and I put it out and it didn't really work. And I don't know what to do about that. This, at least, there is a network of, we have like, you're there. There's a team of people that are also trying things out. And so we can sort of share knowledge and experiences in a way that, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Well, yeah, it makes me think of kind of what you said earlier, and that the way that things have always been, the world continues to change and morph, and at the end of the day, we're theater exists to provide entertainment for people. And I think we kind of often think of entertainment as something unimportant, that it's like, oh, it's just entertainment. But I
Mm,
think it's really, depending on the quality of the entertainment, it's not trivial. And I know
absolutely.
that you know that as a theater maker. And it's almost like there's a noble calling for us to flood the digital space with content that has substance,
Mm,
and at least offer the audiences, and I mean the online audiences, and at the end of the day, that just means the people, right? The public. Give them the choice to consume something that we deem full of substance, as opposed to uh, you know the cat videos. Which is not to say
mhm.
there's not a place for the cat videos. Of course there is, but
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Like, I think there's like, I love a cheesy rom-com. I also love a really heavy political thriller, and I'm gonna go to those at different moments. That doesn't mean I think one is better than the other. It just means that, like, I wanna have different options, and I think that it is yeah, I agree. I think that it's important that we are offering and providing this thing, because I do think there's sort of a it doesn't exist as much right now, but it could. And it could be us. And you know what, like, because it's not there, why not us? Why not have it be, you know, any little theater that says, "Hey, I think I have an idea." Like, yeah, try it. Do it.
yeah.
The worst
Oh,
that's
I
gonna
couldn't
happen is it doesn't work.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's what we have to do. I think it's the wild, wild west. We got to get out there and figure out how to connect with new audiences and connect with them in new ways, and ultimately convince them to come and be in the space with us,
Mhm.
so that they can experience what live performance is, and so that it continues to thrive as we head deeper and deeper into a digital world. Let's not forget that us getting into the same room and breaking bread, even if that bread is entertainment bread, with one another, that community is important. And I think that journey can start online and
Yeah.
ultimately lead the audience back to the in-person event.
Yeah, yeah. I think a kind of, I don't know, misnomer, like misunderstanding of what this is. Like, I talked to a couple people early on when we were joining Stageable, and they were like, "Well, what, like, you're a theater though. Like, why you don't do digital content? Like, why are you going to start doing that instead?" And I was like, "Well, we're not getting rid of live theater. I'm not saying because we've joined a digital platform that we're going to stop producing shows. If anything, it's much more the opposite of, like, we want to do this so that I do have the opportunity to engage with people who, maybe otherwise couldn't be there, or maybe they're like, I don't know if I want to leave my house for that. Let me check it out. You hook them on their phone or on their computer, and then they say, yeah, this is worthwhile. I am invested. I do want to go be in this space. I think, there's a lot for a lot of reasons, a lot of people are like, no, I don't. I want to stay home unless it's something that's really meaningful. And so we still have to try to access those people. We still have to try to give them something and convince them that this is worthwhile and that this is important and that it will add something to them. It will provide them with something. And yeah, like you said, I think entertainment is absolutely necessary. I think that, it helps provide, a release and a distraction at times. It helps process difficult things. It can challenge, it can inspire, like, it can do all of these things. But we have to figure out at a time where, I know that virtually every theater is dealing with, they're still recovering from lower audience rates. People aren't going out like they used to. And it didn't bounce back the way that I think everyone hoped it would after COVID for a lot of reasons. And so now it's like, well, we have to figure out what to do. And I think that this could be an answer of, you got to get to them somehow and then convince them that it's worthwhile to come back out because they used to do it. So maybe we can get them there again. We just have to, like, remind them and convince them and show them what it could be.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. That's a great place to wrap it up. Jesse, thank you so much for being a guest again. And
Of
I look
course.
forward to many more conversations like this in the future and to seeing all the cool stuff that you make at Starling Shakespeare.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was really great to chat.
Well, I'll see you in Newfoundland in about a
See
week.
you in the north.